You made a horrendous mistake. You're fired. Don't ever come back to this company. Gelling that, the manager stormed out of the room. So, I'm getting fired, huh? I've been contributing to the company without any major errors, but it seems I need to start job hunting. But on the second day after being fired, my cell phone suddenly rang. Oh, good, you answered, David. Can you come back to the office right now? Having been told this, the scene I saw when I arrived at the company was: my name is David. I live with my loving wife and an energetic 8-year-old son. I work for a subsidiary of a major food manufacturer, handling the ordering and receipt of food products. I deal with products both for restaurants and retail consumers, so managing the inventory is quite challenging. It's a job where attention to detail is crucial, but I've always managed to do it smoothly without any major mistakes. However, there was one troublemaker at the office. Hey David, this document was supposed to be finished by today, right? The one shouting at me was Paul, the manager. Paul is younger than me, in his 40s, but he's my boss. That's because he is the son of the director of the main food manufacturing company, and he always gives orders with a pompous attitude. Furthermore, he always believes he's right, and for that, he is surprisingly bad at his job. He became a director just 2 weeks ago, and for some reason, he seems to have taken a disliking to me. He checks on me daily, pushing more and more work onto my plate. After you finish that, get this document done as well. Hurry it up. Yes, I understand. You should take the initiative before your boss tells you. Honestly, you're so thoughtless. The manager threw a bundle of papers onto my desk and left the room. As I was picking up the scattered documents, I could hear my colleagues whispering to each other. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but being in the same room, I couldn't help but overhear. Paul is always tough on David, isn't he? David does his job so meticulously, and without any mistakes. I wonder why. But David can be a bit absent-minded, you know. He doesn't hold any significant position at his age, right? Maybe he's not interested in climbing the corporate ladder. Well, with that kind of attitude, promotion seems tough for him. Even when younger manager scolds him, he just brushes it off with a smile. As I overheard my colleagues chuckling behind my back, I let out a sigh. Let them talk. I'm just doing my job my way. Doing what I need to do, my way. I continued to tackle the tasks assigned to me by the manager. However, one day, while I was working as usual, a colleague suddenly began to panic. Answering the phone, he was sweating profusely and kept repeating apologies. Wondering what had happened, the colleague hung up the phone and approached me. David, what's the meaning of this? Me. The colleague handed me a note. The content was a complaint from a major client. What's going on? We ordered 50 units of the regular business product and 500 household items to hand out as samples, but they received only the 50 units of the business product. They were furious, saying they were supposed to distribute the household items at an event in 3 days. How will we make this right? You're kidding. That can't be. I've never made such a mistake before, and I was sure I checked this order too. Why did this happen? I started to panic. I handled orders for 2 types of products, business and household. The large packs for business and the individually packaged household items have the same product name, so they're easy to be mixed up. Because it's an area prone to errors, I always double-checked, especially since it would be difficult to correct such a mistake. But the fact remains that we've got this complaint. Quickly composing myself, I opened my computer to verify the order. The purchase order showed a record of 50 business products. That's strange. I'm sure I ordered the 500 household items as well. Unable to believe my eyes, I felt a sudden chill. Then, the next moment, Paul's loud voice echoed throughout the room. What kind of mistake is this, you useless employee? No, I'm sure I ordered the 500 household items too. Enough. You clearly only ordered the business products. If you have time to make excuses, Find a way to gather those 500 household items now. Paul pushed me against my desk in anger and stormed out of the room. My colleagues looked on with concern at the altercation between manager and me, but none offered help. Either way, I have to find those household items. I quickly returned to my desk and started calling our branches. I'm sorry for the sudden request. If you have any spare household items, could you send them over? Please, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I owe you one. Only 240 left. Only 3 days left until the event where our client will participate. Can I really gather all 500 by then? No time to doubt. I need to do whatever I can right now. I frantically made calls to address the situation. I deeply apologize. Yes, thank you for checking. I kept bowing and asking if they had any stock. Even if there was just one item available, I would drive there myself to pick it up. Only 70 left. And then, the day before the event, holding boxes filled with the products, I bowed deeply. Thank you so much for this. I can't thank you enough. Finally, I had managed to secure the 500th item. In the end, I managed to prepare the required amount for the event where our client was participating. After that, I quickly headed to the client's place to deliver the goods, but the person in charge looked down on me with a gaze filled with anger. What's going on? We've been doing business for a long time, but I've never felt like this before. Sorry, but I can't trust you anymore. Our business relationship is over. The client angrily took the goods and with a slam, shut the door right in front of me. I stood there, head bowed in disappointment for a while before slowly making my way back to the office. I did everything I could. But when I got back, there stood manager with a stern look, arms crossed, waiting for me. You really messed up this time. If this keeps up, you are going to ruin the company's reputation. You're fired. Leave now and don't come back. With that, the Paul stormed out of the room. I trudged back to my desk, dejected. Is this how I get fired? My mistake caused the company so much trouble. I had always been a reliable employee and contributed well, but it seems I'll have to start job hunting. It'll be tough at my age since I haven't climbed the corporate ladder. How will I break the news to my wife and son when I get home? With a heavy heart, I started packing up my things. As the end of the day approached, I apologized to my colleagues. I'm really sorry for the trouble I've caused. Thank you for everything. I'll be on my way now. I went around, apologizing to everyone, and then clocked out. After finishing the formalities to use my remaining paid time off, I realized there was nothing left for me to do at the company. It's been a long 3 days. I could hear the creaking as I stretched my neck and shoulders. What will I tell my wife and son when I get home? Would they be disappointed in me? Would they see me as a failure? No, they'll greet me with their usual smiles. Given their nature, they wouldn't blame me. But that thought somehow felt even harder to bear. Lost in thought, I found myself close to home. I'm home. Welcome back, Dad. You're late. Oh, you look a bit off. Something happened. Holding my energetic son in my arms, I smiled and shook my head in response to my wife's question. Yeah, just a little something. I'll talk about it later. All right then. Let's eat once you've changed. I headed to my bedroom at a slow pace. Both my wife and son greeted me with warm smiles, just as I had imagined. That made me even more unsure about how to break the news to them. Anyways, I'll tell them after dinner. With renewed determination, I went back to the living room where my wife and son were waiting. Let's eat. Let's eat. So, what happened? You seem a bit down. Dad, something wrong. Their voices, full of concern for me, made my heart race. But I couldn't keep this from them forever. Taking a deep breath and gathering my courage, I began to speak. I'm really sorry, you two. It looks like I've been laid off from work. Upon hearing my words, wife's eyes widened in shock, rendering her speechless. Instead, it was my son who raised his voice. "That's awesome. Dad, you don't have to go to work now, right?" Yeah, I'll be home for a while starting tomorrow." "Yay, let's go to the amusement park then. I've been wanting to go." My son is beaming, gazing at me with a big smile. I just stared back at my son, not expecting his reaction like this. Then, my wife began to chuckle softly. "Oh, that's a great idea. You've seemed quite swamped lately. It'd be nice for you to relax. I'd be happy if you were home more." I was taken aback by my wife and son's response. But at the same time, I felt a great sense of relief. I see. Neither of them blames me for getting laid off. Guess it's all right for me to just take it easy at home. Come to think of it, since my son grew up, we haven't really gone on any long trips. I had left all the parenting and household chores to my wife, so maybe this was a good opportunity to spend time with the family. Deep in thought, cherishing the moment, I smiled at the two of them. "How about this? The weekend when there's no school, let's all go to the amusement park." "Yay, you promise, Dad? I'm looking forward to it already." Their joyful voices filled the living room. What a warm family gathering this is. I'm truly blessed to have these happy moments. Feeling a bit relieved, I continued with my meal. However, the very next morning after I took my paid leave, my cell phone suddenly rang. The caller was a colleague from work. I wonder what's up. Did I make another mistake? With a hint of anxiety, I answered the call. "Hello, this is David." "Oh, David, glad you picked up. I'm sorry to bother you during your vacation, but can you come to the office right away? Did something happen? I'm sorry. Please come back as soon as possible. I can't explain in detail over the phone, but it's urgent." "Understood. I'll be right there." Hearing the urgency in my colleague's voice, I quickly got dressed. My wife looked at me with a puzzled expression. "Is everything okay? Was at the office?" "Yeah, they need me. I'm heading out." I arrived at the office about 40 minutes after the call. As I approached my department, the same colleague hurriedly came over. "David, thank goodness you are here. Please, come with me, quickly." Following my hurried colleague, I couldn't help but tilt my head in confusion. Why the rush? What could have possibly happened? As we ran, he started explaining the situation to me. According to him, the morning after I was fired, an infuriated CEO stormed into our department. "Why isn't he here? Explain this." Are you talking about David? We're okay without that guy." Paul, who was there, tried to calm the CEO, but that seemed to make him even angrier. "What are you talking about? Just bring David back now." That's when they decided to contact me. Hearing my colleague's story, I was still puzzled. But I was fired, right? My colleague looked just as baffled. Leading me further, we soon came upon the CEO and a visibly upset manager. "Hey, David, good to have you back." I was under the impression I was fired. Hearing the word fired, the CEO opened his mouth in surprise. But soon, he broke out into a hearty laugh. "We'd never let you go. Without you, who's going to manage transactions for the company?" With that, the CEO showed me his computer screen. There, I saw the order page for our products. Spotting a red warning icon on the screen, I couldn't help but raise my voice. "Hey, something's off here. It looks like no orders have been placed since the day after I got fired and went on paid leave." "Well, that's because you weren't here." Why would orders stop just because I'm not around?" "Because, David, it's a job that only you can handle." The CEO then handed a note to Paul, who sat silently. "Paul, can you place the order from this note?" "Sure." Upon receiving the note, Paul moved to the computer. However, as he was about to place it, he stopped, looking utterly confused. "Excuse me, what's written here? I need this in English to place the order." Hearing Paul's words, the CEO burst into hearty laughter. After a short while, he regained his composure and looked straight at me. "All right, David, can you handle the order from that note?" "Wait, what? No way, if I couldn't do it. There's no way David could." "Just get up and hand that note to David." Following the CEO's command, Paul, looking a tad grumpy, passed the note to me, pushing it into my hand with a look that said, "Like you can't do any better." I took the note, sat at the computer as instructed, and checked the order details. Then, I began placing it as usual. "This is a food product from Singapore. I'm placing the order now." "Is that English?" The words look all jumbled. "The next item is from Australia." What's this product called? I can't read this at all." Paul kept interrupting, but I steadily continued with the order. Once I'd entered all the items from the note, I turned to the CEO. "If there's anything else, I'll order it right away. We have our regular order with South Africa coming up soon, right?" "That's right. Hey, if there are any order requests, bring them over. David's back, and he can handle it right away." Upon hearing the CEO's words, several employees immediately rushed over. "David, could you please handle this? I need this done too, and urgently." As I busily input the orders from the forms being handed to me, I overheard Paul mumbling complaints from afar. "I can't believe it. How can David, of all people, place these orders?" That's when it hit me. It seems Paul didn't know I was proficient in English dialects. In fact, during my college years, I had researched various English dialects and had almost aced the test. I had especially studied English influenced by local languages in places like Singapore and South Africa, which allowed me to understand order forms without constantly looking up local terms. Being able to read and write all communications with vendors from those countries had been quite beneficial in transactions. Once I had finished inputting all the requested orders, I double-checked the product names and quantities. "All right, everything seems correct," and send. I felt relieved to have successfully placed the orders, but I then noticed something odd. What's this? This computer was exclusively for orders, and it displayed order history and the last update history once an order was finalized. Moreover, an employee ID was required to operate this computer, so the name of the employee who was using it at the time was also recorded. Upon checking the records, the last update was still on the day I was told I'd be fired. However, the last person to update it was listed as Paul. I see, that's what happened. "What's going on, David?" Everything became clear, and I stood up abruptly. "The order mistake the other day wasn't my fault, isn't that right, Paul? What are you on about now? It was your mistake, and that's why you were fired, wasn't it?" Confronted by my accusation, Paul, with a red face, retorted. He fervently pointed to the computer screen I had been working on. "You were the expert at ordering, weren't you? Plus, you just said that you're the only one who can understand that gibberish English, right? You really won't admit it, will you? Then, let me show you the evidence." With that, I promptly printed out the screen. I showed the printed paper to everyone present. "Take a look here. It says Paul under the last updated column, doesn't it?" "No, that's..." Paul stammered, flailing his hands, but everyone's gaze was fixed on the paper I held. The CEO took the paper from me, staring at Paul's name intently. After a moment, he said in a grave tone, "It seems it's time for you to leave this company, Paul." "No, this must be some mistake," Paul began, pale-faced, trying to explain himself. But the CEO, with a stern look, declared, "I'll be informing your father about this. Expect appropriate consequences. Brace yourself." The CEO fixed his gaze on Paul and then left the room. Suddenly, Paul let out a short cry and collapsed weakly to the floor. Meanwhile, I was surrounded by my colleagues, all addressing me at once. "David, I had no idea you had such skills. To be honest, I thought you were incompetent. I'm truly sorry. We didn't talk much, and I thought you were a bit odd. I apologize." "Hey, it's not like you guys did anything wrong," so no need to apologize. Besides, it looks like I still have a job here, so let's continue to get along," I said, trying to reassure my colleagues. Seeing their relieved expressions, I felt my own tension ease. And so, having proven I hadn't made any mistakes, I safely returned home. When I told my wife and son that I'd be returning to work, they were genuinely overjoyed. A few days later, while I was on paid leave, my cell phone rang again. It was the CEO. "Sorry to bother you during your time off. The thing is, I got a call from a client CEO. He insisted that he needed to speak with you directly." "That's okay. What happened?" "After the order mishap, the client wanted to know if it truly was your mistake. They remembered how dedicated and passionate you have been in our dealings with them, and thought there might have been some misunderstanding." "Oh, I see." I was brought back to the memories of that time. It feels good to know that our long-standing client had such trust in me. The CEO continued speaking. "I always believed you couldn't have made that mistake, but to think that Paul tampered with it, I'm truly sorry for this. After that incident, we had a meeting with the higher-ups, and as a result, he was let go. He deserved it after what he did. Paul's father is a top executive at our parent company, but it seems his actions were still inexcusable." From what the CEO said, Paul is currently looking for jobs at other companies, but rumors of his tampering are making it tough for him. After hanging up, I took a deep breath. Now, I can get back to work as usual. With Paul gone, I'm even more motivated. Seeing my renewed energy, my wife said, "Seems like some good news," and chuckled. The next day, as we had promised, we took a family trip to the amusement park. My wife and I enjoyed the park, watching our son looking happy. "Dad, Mom, we can get a fast pass here." "Oh, they have that handy option." Our son explained that it was a system where we could use the attractions on a priority basis within a designated time. Seeing how much our son has grown without us realizing makes me feel warm inside. And so, we enjoyed the amusement park the entire day. Soon, the day to return to work arrived. I'm off. I left the house earlier than usual. The familiar commute route looked brighter to my eyes. Upon arriving at the office, I brushed off the dust from my suit and slowly entered the building. "Good morning." "Oh, good morning, David. I hate to bother you right as you get in, but could you handle this for me?" In his colleague's hand was an order form for Singapore. "Yes, leave it to me." And just like that, my daily routine began to get back on track. 6 years ago, I used to think like this. I'm the happiest man in the world, I believed. Catherine and I met in a college. I confessed my feelings to her, and we started dating. Together, we went on diner-hopping adventures, watched our favorite movies, took drives, and spent quality time together. After dating for a while, we moved in together, and once we both secured jobs and got settled in, I proposed her and we got married. Every day was blissful after we became a married couple. Whenever Catherine answered the phone at home, she'd say, "Hello, this is Thompson," with a slightly shy expression. I adored watching her in those moments. For our first wedding anniversary, we decided to make it a memorable one and plan a spa getaway. I took the afternoon off to buy Catherine a surprise gift and stopped by a jewelry store. Just as I stepped outside after making the purchase, my cell phone inside my bag rang. "Is this Mr. Robert Thompson's?" It was the police on the other end. At that moment, I felt my blood drain from my face. Could Catherine have gotten involved in some kind of incident? That crossed my mind. The officer on the other end calmly began to explain. "There was a fire in a building full of restaurants downtown, and your wife was in a meeting in the shop next to where the fire started. Cardboard boxes in the hallway caught fire quickly. The flames didn't reach the store Catherine was in, but it quickly filled with thick smoke. She lost consciousness and was rushed to the ER," the officer explained. I understand. I'll be there right away." I felt disoriented and panicked, but I managed to hail a cab and rush to the hospital where Catherine was taken. The 30-minute ride to the hospital felt like hours. My heart raced. Please let her be okay. But my prayers went unanswered. When I arrived at the hospital, Catherine was already covered with a white sheet. The doctor tried to explain, but I couldn't absorb any of it. I sank to the ground, my mind a blank. After 1 week after funeral, I returned to work, just getting through each day. That was all I could manage. Colleagues tried to cheer me up by inviting me out, but I had no interest. I couldn't accept the reality. Then, after marking the 5th anniversary of her passing, something unexpected happened one day. The administrative assistant in my department, named Amy, went on maternity and parental leave. For the 6 months that Amy was away, we contracted with an agency to bring in a temporary assistant. On the following Monday, during the morning briefing, the temp, named Jessica, was introduced. "I'll be here for the next 6 months. Looking forward to working with you," she said, bowing slightly. My boss gestured towards me and said, "Robert, could you?" He then explained to Jessica, "Follow Robert for a while to learn the ropes." I couldn't help but stare at Jessica. I felt my heart pounding. I managed to maintain my composure and said, "I'm Robert. Nice to meet you," but I probably stared at her too intensely. She looked so much like Catherine. So identical that I wondered if she was Catherine reincarnated. This is gonna be tough, mentoring her. "Jessica, how good are you with computers?" I asked. She smiled briefly and said, looking me straight in the eyes, "I have a basic understanding of everything." I remember Catherine always smiled first before answering confidently. In the evening, when I happened to glance at her entering data, our eyes met. As I hastily tried to look away, she quickly stood up and came rushing over to me. With a cheerful smile, she offered me a candy, saying, "Here you go, Robert. When you're tired, take some glucose." I recalled Catherine giving me the same advice when I brought work home. And then, I realized I was searching for Catherine in her. I always thought Robert was approachable, but sometimes he looks so sad. Is it just my imagination? When I ask about work, he explains everything thoroughly, but he rarely talks about his family. What concerns me most is that I've never seen Robert laugh. He must have gone through something tough. But I shouldn't pry into someone's private life. Still, I couldn't help but wonder how hard it must be to live without a smile. Then, a month later, I came in a bit early to finish the presentation material for the joint meeting among 3 companies scheduled for the next day. I noticed a commotion in the department. "What's going on, boss?" When I asked, I discovered a shocking situation. A late-night lightning strike yesterday caused problems with most of the company's computers. My own computer was damaged too. It wouldn't even power on. The presentation material was strictly confidential, so I couldn't back it up to external drives like USBs. "Man, this is tough, but we have to get this done today, right?" To the visibly flustered boss I said, "Do we have any computers available right now? I'll do whatever it takes to redo the work." With that, I braced myself for what was ahead. A bit before starting time, Jessica came in, so I decided to get her help with data collection. Before we knew it, it was already 6 p.m., the end of the workday. "I'll take care of the rest," I told Jessica. But she smiled and replied, "No, I'll stay too. There's still work I can do, right?" "No, Jessica, I don't think we'll finish until after midnight. If you stay any longer, it would be a breach of your contract with your staffing agency." Upon hearing this, she murmured, "Oh, right," and after saying, "All right then, I'll be going," she clocked out and left. However, to my surprise, she returned an hour later. "Why are you? Didn't you go home?" A stunned me was met with a smile from Jessica, who said, "It'll be faster if we both do it. Oh, consider this as volunteering, so it's outside of the contract, and she cheekily stuck her tongue out. But first, let's eat. You know what they say, an army marches on its stomach, she said, laying out sandwiches, salad, and soup on the desk. Thank you, but after eating, you should really go. I don't want you to miss the last train. I tried to persuade her, but she was quite stubborn. Once she made up her mind, there was no changing it. Even in that, she was so much like her. Even then, I couldn't help but see my wife in her. Robert, do we need a graph for this strength explanation? Well, we need a graph from an experiment conducted in Japan about metal strength. I'll look it up later, I said, thinking she could first extract the local data. Jessica then smiled and said, "No worries, I can do it. I understand Japanese." Her Japanese skills were impressive. She found international sites on metal experiments that I wasn't aware of and translated them swiftly. And by 4 a.m., we finally completed the material. Thanks to Jessica, I finished 3 hours earlier than I expected. She made 2 coffees and said, "I'm glad it's done," with a smile. Then suddenly, I decided to ask her something I'd been curious about for a long time. "Hey Jessica, this picture is of my wife. Do you happen to know her?" I showed her a photo of Catherine saved on my phone. For a moment, she looked shocked, but then her expression turned sad and teary-eyed as she said, "I know her very well." "So, you're Catherine's husband. Were you close friends with Catherine? It's our first time meeting, right?" As I asked, she began to slowly share her story. "Catherine and I are cousins and grew up together. We spent every day together until I graduated from middle school. But then, due to my father's job transfer, my whole family moved to England. We returned when he was transferred back to the main office 2 years ago. That's why I couldn't attend Catherine's wedding or funeral." Tears streamed down her face as she continued. "After returning to the US, I tried to visit the address from the wedding invitation, but they had already moved. I quickly apologized to her, feeling guilty. 'I'm so sorry, Jessica. I didn't realize you tried to visit. Thank you so much.' As I bowed my head, Jessica, who had been teary-eyed, suddenly chuckled. 'Robert, you're exactly as Catherine described you.' I became curious about how Catherine used to talk about me. According to her, whenever she talked with Catherine on the phone, I would always come up in their conversation. She always gushed about how I was the most sincere and kindest person in the world. She told me this with a nostalgic smile. Hearing this, I found myself smiling. 'Ah, I've finally seen you smile. I was starting to think you never did. It's reassuring.' Her words caught me off guard. I realized that in the 5 years since Catherine passed, I hadn't smiled at all. I probably made others around me uneasy. I hadn't smiled at all since. I felt sorry to Jessica as well. 'Jessica, if you're free next Sunday, would you like to come over in memory of Catherine?' Upon hearing this, she excitedly replied, 'I'll come. I'll definitely come.' Maybe it was the excitement of staying up all night, but we ended up chatting for a while. Concerned about our presentation later that day, we soon left for the office. The joint presentation with the other 2 companies turned out to be a huge success. Jessica, having lived abroad, showcased her Japanese skills, collecting numerous data from Japan. Her translations were highly praised. Our manager was smiling throughout. Several days passed, and then came Sunday. As promised, she visited me in memorial for Catherine. She prayed for more than 20 minutes. I made some orange picote, which was Catherine's favorite. Upon tasting it, Jessica instantly recognized it and said, "This is the orange pico Catherine and I loved," and smiled nostalgically before taking a sip. Then, with a serious look, she started talking while looking straight at me. "Robert, in the month that I've worked with you, and until the night we prepared for the presentation, I haven't seen you smile. I understand that these past 5 years have been tough and heartbreaking, but maybe it's time to let go. Catherine would be the most worried seeing you without a smile." Yeah. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt as though I had just woken up from a long slumber. I've lost my emotions, and I wonder what Catherine would think if she saw me like this. Being the warrior that Catherine was, she might still be concerned about me. Maybe she hasn't found peace in heaven yet. Seeing me deep in thought, she said, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have spoken out of turn," and lowered her head. "No, you're right. I shouldn't keep Catherine worried forever. I probably worried you too this past month. I'm truly sorry." I apologized to her. She smiled and said, "No, thank you for realizing, and thank you for letting me meet Catherine today." She has the same laugh, same way of talking, and even the same genuine kindness. I thought that perhaps it was Catherine who brought her to our company. After that, she often visited our home and brought beautiful flowers and delicious treats to place before Catherine's memorial. And I started going out with her for movies and meals. Lately, I've come to cherish her slightly dominant side and the way she accidentally speaks in Japanese when she gets mad. Today marks the anniversary of Catherine's passing. For 5 years, I visited Catherine's grave alone, but today, we both visited together. She meticulously and gently cleaned Catherine's gravestone. We placed flowers, a candle, incense, and Catherine's favorite, cheesecake, and paid our respects. "Catherine, I think I've been a cause for concern since you passed. I'm sorry, but I have something to tell you today. I'm going to be happy with Jessica, and every year on this day, I'll come and tell you how we're doing, so you don't have to worry anymore." As I spoke in front of the grave, Jessica, teary-eyed yet smiling, spoke to the gravestone. "Catherine, you know Robert's a bit unique, right?" Wondering if I'd said something funny, Jessica said, "Proposing in front of a grave, well, it's fine. Catherine's our witness, after all." We looked at each other and laughed. Then we both lined up, put our hands together, and said, "We won't let you worry anymore, Catherine. I'll make sure we're happy." And I felt as though Catherine was smiling at the two of us.